Everyone in Iron Harbor thought winter tragedies were just the price of living beside the wildest lake God ever made. A place where storms swallow sound and hope alike. But when Officer Caleb Morgan followed a German shepherd's desperate bark into the blizzard, he uncovered a secret someone would kill to keep frozen. A lighthouse bell stolen in the night. Storm data rewritten like lies carved in ice. And a mayor who tried to turn disaster into profit, ignoring the lives God entrusted him to protect. Why did this loyal K9 reappear from the ashes of a forgotten fire? Why did a corrupt heart believe he could silence the truth beneath the snow? And how did one brave dog, guided by heaven's light, bring a broken officer back to faith again? This isn't just a story about survival. It's about the miracle God placed inside loyalty, human and canine alike. Stay with us to the very end, because what happened in that frozen storm proved one thing. No darkness is stronger than a light God wants the world to see. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments so this story of hope and courage can travel across the world. The blizzard swallowed Iron Harbor whole, wind screaming against the frozen skin of Lake Superior like a warning from God himself. Officer Caleb Morgan, age 36, clenched the steering wheel of his patrol SUV as white snowflakes hammered the windshield. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw that once made him look fearless in Coast Guard rescue photos. Now, faint lines of exhaustion and grief marked the edges of his storm-grey eyes. 5 years ago, he had lost his younger brother, Ethan, during a failed rescue mission on the same lake. That night carved something sharp and silent inside him, a belief that no matter how hard he tried, he would always arrive too late. Iron Harbor's main roads were deserted. No headlights, no pedestrians, just Caleb's vehicle crawling along the cliffside highway. He whispered to himself, a habit since days aboard rescue cutters. "Almost done, Morgan. Just finish the route." His breath fogged the interior, mixing with the smell of leather and cold metal. Snow drifts rose like white waves, each gust rattling the SUV harder. A dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio, barely audible under static. "All units, warning, buoy readings don't match." Then the signal died entirely. Caleb cursed under his breath. Weather sensors rarely malfunctioned, unless someone wanted them to. Suddenly, a snap of ice, a violent skid, the rear tires lost grip. Caleb's heart slammed against his ribs. He yanked the wheel left. Too late. The SUV spun, guardrail exploding outward in a blast of snow and metal. The world tumbled. Glass shattered. The roof crumpled as the vehicle slammed onto the frozen inlet below. Everything went white and silent. Pain jolted through his ribs. His left leg screamed under twisted metal. Caleb tasted blood, copper sharp. If the ice cracked, the SUV would sink into the black water beneath, a grave colder than any coffin. His breathing hitched. "Ethan." He wasn't ready to die tonight, but the cold seeped in, greedy, numbing thought and bone. His vision flickered, a low growl. Through the shattered side window, 2 amber eyes appeared, glowing fiercely against the storm. A German shepherd burst into view, fur peppered with frost. Big, powerful, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, with a thick black and tan coat, muscular legs built for sprinting across impossible terrain. But what caught Caleb's attention was the dog's left ear, notched, scarred as if ripped during a fight, and around its neck, a torn leather collar stamped with burned letters. Kind Bird, Unit 12. A retired service dog? Stray? Or abandoned? The shepherd barked once, commanding, urgent, then clamped its jaws gently onto Caleb's jacket sleeve and pulled. Caleb gasped in agony, metal digging deeper into his shin as he forced his body to move. The dog's claws scraped ice, muscles shaking from effort. Inch by inch, Caleb's torso slid free. At last, his leg wrenched loose. The feeling nearly made him black out. The shepherd refused to let him stop, dragging, hauling until both collapsed several feet away from the wreck. The ice beneath the SUV groaned, splintered, boom, and swallowed the vehicle into the dark water below. Caleb stared, chest heaving. "You saved me." The shepherd only pressed close, its warm breath melting frost on his cheek. He placed a trembling hand on its neck, grateful tears stinging his eyes. He needed shelter, and fast. The dog nudged him toward a faint shape looming through the storm, the harbor light station, an old lighthouse that had once guided sailors home but had been decommissioned and partially dismantled years earlier. Its white paint peeled away in ragged strips, windows boarded, and the iron balcony twisted like broken ribs. Inside, the air was icy still. Dusty lanterns hung crooked. Faint footprints, old or new, lined the cracked floor. Caleb slumped against the wall, trying to slow the shivering taking control of his body. The dog paced restlessly, sniffing the shadows as if expecting danger. Caleb spotted an old logbook lying open on a table, pages stiff with cold. Someone had written a fresh note, ink dark and purposeful. Bell moved 2340, per order. Beside it lay a ferry ticket stamped North Star Shipping. Strange. The iconic lighthouse bell, symbol of Iron Harbor, had been removed recently, in a storm like this. He reached to scratch the shepherd behind the ear. "What's your name, boy? Who left you out here?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but in its amber eyes Caleb saw intelligence and something else. Sorrow. Meanwhile, across town, Ruthie Lane, age 62, sat alone in a radio booth lined with Christmas lights that never came down. She wore lavender-grey hair, pulled into a stubborn bun, and glasses always sliding down her nose. With a grandmotherly voice full of sass and warmth, she updated Iron Harbor every night. But tonight, the NOAA buoy data showed calm waters despite the shrieking catastrophe outside. Ruthie clenched her jaw. "Don't you dare lie to my town," she muttered, tapping the console. Something was terribly wrong. Back in the lighthouse, Caleb forced himself to his feet. "Okay, buddy. We stay awake. We—" A loud creak above them. The shepherd froze, ears pinned, teeth bare. Caleb held his breath. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crossed the metal floor upstairs. Then, without warning, slam! The trap door to the upper level crashed shut and locked from above. The storm howled. Caleb's pulse thundered, and they were not alone. The iron shutters of the decommissioned lighthouse still rattled from the slam above, when Officer Caleb Morgan forced himself upright again. The German shepherd stood pressed against his leg, body stiff, ears pointed toward the sealed trapdoor as though every muscle in him were a question. Do we fight or flee? Caleb swallowed the ache in his ribs and made the decision for both of them. We move, he whispered, before whoever that is comes back. The dog nudged him toward the exit, snow blowing inward like tiny white sparks. Outside, the storm carved the world into shifting shapes and howling voids. Caleb leaned heavily on the dog, and the dog accepted the weight like a sworn duty. You need a name, Caleb muttered through chattering teeth, thinking of those amber eyes and the way the dog had appeared like a silent shadow through death's doorway. Sable. Yeah, Sable fits. The shepherd flicked an ear as if accepting the title. A beam of warm light cut through the storm, a clinic window glowing just a block away. Caleb limped toward it, Sable clearing the path, barking once to alert those inside. The door swung open and Dr. Olivia Reed stepped out into the snow. She was in her early 30s, with chestnut brown hair pulled back into a loose ponytail, a sprinkle of freckles across pale cheeks reddened by the cold. Her frame was slender but strong from years of wrangling unruly animals, and she wore thick glasses slightly fogged from steam and winter air. Olivia had the calm, steady stare of someone who had spent too much time stitching broken creatures back together, and too little time mending her own wounds. A divorce 3 years ago had left her quiet, guarded but fiercely compassionate underneath. Caleb, what happened to you? And this dog? She gasped, ushering them inside. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and hay from the small barn attached in the back. Caleb summed up the fall and Sable's rescue in clipped breaths. Olivia knelt beside the dog, running gentle fingers along the notched ear, the scarred shoulder, the frayed collar. He's been trained, she said. See how he holds himself, alert but disciplined. And look, she found a microchip beneath the fur near the neck. But when she scanned it, the device sparked weakly and let out a sizzling pop. Damaged by heat, she murmured, like a fire. A warehouse fire, Caleb muttered, a memory stirring. He didn't know which one, but the details sat in his mind like a seed of dread. At that moment, the clinic wine chimes jingled, and a teenage boy with black hair sticking out from under a wool beanie burst in carrying a laptop. Noah Park, 17, with sharp cheekbones and long fingers quick from coding and soldering, was a bright kid who preferred screens over people. He had immigrated with his family when he was 5. Their fishing business collapsed due to storm damage insurance never paid out. Noah's distrust of authority had grown from watching his parents fight a system that insisted their suffering didn't exist. He held up his laptop with a triumphant yet worried look. I think I know why the weather reports didn't match the storm. His screen displayed buoy data, wave height, wind speed, all labeled stable. But beneath was raw feed showing hurricane force readings. Someone's injecting false calm signals into the network, Noah explained. If the storm looks mild, town officials delay evacuations, and when the damage hits, huge insurance payouts. His voice stuttered, angry. People could die just so someone can cash a check. Caleb's breathing slowed, not from calm, but from focus. A hunter scenting the trail of something cruel. We need proof. Physical proof. Sable growled, ears tracking the howling storm outside. The dog was restless again, pushing at the door, as if he already knew where the answers were. The boathouse. Olivia tried to protest when Caleb stood, nearly collapsing. You are not fit to move. I don't have a choice, he replied, voice tight. Someone out there wants to bury this town under snow. And bodies. Minutes later, they arrived at the old Whitaker boathouse near the frozen shoreline. The boards groaned under their weight. Inside, a single lantern on a crate cast trembling shadows. Caleb scanned manifests scattered on the table, shipments logged through North Star Shipping, labeled for Aurora reinsurance adjustments, and one document stamped in fresh ink. Asset transfer, lighthouse bell. The bell, symbol of Iron Harbor's history. Why would anyone insure it during a blizzard? Sable paced near the far wall where a tarp covered something large. Caleb's hand brushed it, and a tiny beep chirped from beneath the floor. He froze. Booby trap! Back! He shouted, grabbing Sable's collar. Ka-thoom! A shock wave of fire tore through the boathouse, sending shards of timber and sparks into the snow. The heat hit like a punch, melting ice under their boots. Caleb's ears rang, his vision spun. The boathouse roof began to sag, flames licking upward as if hungry to eat the sky. Sable lunged, teeth gripping Caleb's jacket, dragging him away as another beam crashed down. They burst onto the dock just as the structure collapsed in a roaring inferno. The lake hissed beneath the falling wood. Then, a faint thudding, a muffled cry. Caleb whipped around. Under the thin sheet of ice near the pier, hands beat desperately upward, blood smearing the cracks. Someone, alive, trapped beneath the frozen surface, sinking fast. Sable barked wildly, claws digging at the ice as if time itself were the enemy. Caleb dropped to his knees, heart slamming into his ribs. The storm wasn't trying to kill them, someone else was. The wind had eased only slightly, as though the storm paused to breathe before striking again. Caleb Morgan knelt beside the cracked ice, where a pair of frozen hands had been beating moments ago. He smashed the surface with the butt of his flashlight, the sound echoing like gunshots in the icy darkness. Sable whined and pawed beside him, his claws scraping frantic grooves. Together, they broke through enough for Caleb to plunge his arms into the freezing lake and grip the drowning figure's jacket. With a heave that sent pain screaming through his ribs, he pulled Noah Park from beneath the ice. The boy gasped the air like it was something rare and precious, coughing violently as his thin body shivered in uncontrollable spasms. Caleb hauled him toward the clinic again, Sable pressed protectively against them like a living wall. Inside, Dr. Olivia Reed rushed to help, her freckled face sharpening in determination as she worked. She wrapped Noah in thick blankets, while Caleb peeled open the soaked laptop bag still clutched to the boy's chest. The waterproof sleeve had done its job. Inside was a small USB drive blinking with red light, alive, and possibly holding the answers the town needed. Noah, teeth chattering, managed to whisper, "They tried to shut me up. Someone shut off the cameras downtown, and the boathouse wasn't abandoned. They knew we were coming." Fear and fury warred behind his dark eyes. Caleb squeezed the boy's shoulder, promising silently he wouldn't let what happened to Noah happen to anyone else. But they couldn't stay. If the explosion had been a warning, the next move would be bullets. The safest walls left in Iron Harbor were at St. Bridget's Church, a stone structure older than the town itself. When they arrived, frost clung to stained glass windows like veins of silver. Inside, warmth radiated from pews where Ruthie Lane and a group of seniors had gathered. Ruthie, lavender-grey hair escaping its bun, wore a sparkly blue sweater, embroidered with a cat holding a tambourine, her version of festive preparedness. At the pulpit, she adjusted a tablet for a live stream while the choir warmed up their voices, laughing between verses about singing louder than the blizzard. Humor was their shield, faith their lantern. "You boys look like you've been chewed up by the lake and spit back out," Ruthie remarked, guiding them further inside. Her tone remained playful, but her eyes, sharp and watchful behind bifocals, flicked immediately to the USB in Caleb's hand, like she recognized its danger. While Noah dried by the heater, Caleb took the USB into a small room near the altar, where Father Tom Weller, a man in his late 50s with weathered skin, gentle brown eyes, and a grey beard trimmed close, kept the church archives. He rarely spoke of his time as an army chaplain, but the quiet caution in his movements revealed a man who had seen enough death to understand when it lurked nearby. Without question, Hecol opened the heavy sacristy safe, an old steel box bolted into thick stone. Caleb placed the USB inside, his pulse slowing just enough to feel a moment of safety. He needed answers. At a table near the choir area, Noah displayed files from the drive. Shipping schedules, ledger transfers, insurance claims approved the same night storms were falsely marked minor. One name repeated, Mayor Charles Denton. Denton, a charming man in his early 50s with slick black hair always styled perfectly and a politician's smile, one that never reached his calculating blue eyes. He ran Iron Harbor like a business, and every storm was a profit margin. A folder stopped Caleb's heart. Photos of Sable, younger, seated proud beside a fire station truck, wearing a K9 vest labeled Unit 12. Another picture showed the warehouse fire Olivia mentioned, flames towering, firefighters subdued by smoke, and the caption read, "Document destruction." Sable had been there. He had survived something he wasn't supposed to. Before Caleb could absorb the implications, Ruthie's live stream cut from hymns to whispered warnings disguised as humor. Dearest listeners, if your porch lights flicker, that's the Lord reminding you to stay inside, or the power grid lying through its teeth. The choir giggled, unaware of the razor edge beneath her words. But Caleb's phone vibrated. A message. Urgent. Council voting tonight. Bell sale. The lighthouse bell again. Why move it now? Because a bell lost in a storm is a bigger payout than a bell sold fairly. He was ready to confront Denton at town hall when light bulbs above flickered, once, twice, and everything went dark. Sable growled, a deep, gut-born warning. Caleb spun toward the archive room. The door was cracked open. He sprinted, ribs screaming, flung the door wide. The safe stood open like a gaping wound. The USB was gone. A metallic click sounded behind him. Caleb turned and found himself staring at Chief Eldon Price, a man near 60 with a broad build, grizzled moustache, and tired eyes that once showed integrity, but were now dull with something colder. Price had served Iron Harbor since before Caleb was born. Known for strict fairness, he'd lost a daughter to medical bills insurance refused to cover, bitterness slowly poisoning his sense of justice. He held a folded paper, a suspension notice. "Effective immediately, Morgan," Price said, voice gravel-deep. "You're off duty. Hand over your weapon." Sable stepped between them, fur bristling. On Price's boots, Caleb saw it. Fine grey dust stuck in the grooves, ash from the boathouse explosion. Caleb's breath froze mid-air. "What did you do?" Price didn't answer. He only tightened his grip on the notice. Sable's growl deepened into a snarl. And somewhere in the dark church, the choir continued singing, unaware that a traitor now held the law in his hands. The storm had shifted its hunger to the hills. Snow slammed sideways against the winding road leading up to the abandoned radar station, a relic of the Cold War that now hunched against the sky like a rusted sentinel. Caleb Morgan trudged ahead, head low, his breath a ragged cloud. Without his badge, without his weapon, he felt like a soldier who had already lost the war. But his stride never faltered. Beside him, Sable pushed forward through the drifts with a silent determination, his powerful shoulders cutting a path no human could match. His ears twitched with every unnatural sound, as if the storm itself was a predator stalking them. Behind Caleb followed Dr. Olivia Reed, her cheeks red from windburn, her long ponytail whipping like a banner of defiance. Despite the cold, sweat dampened her gloves. Fear, not temperature, made her hands shake. The warehouse photos of Sable haunted her. She wondered what horrors the brave dog had endured before fate returned him to this fight. Close to Olivia's side walked Noah Park, the teenage hacker whose slight frame hid a stubborn streak bigger than his years. Ice clung to the hem of his parka, and his beanie had iced into a stiff crown, but his dark eyes burned with the fire of someone who refused to be silent anymore. The radar dome emerged from the white, a grey sphere of metal, split with age, its antenna snapped like a broken bone. Caleb checked the path, instincts sharp. "Keep close, no hero moves." Noah nodded, though his teeth chattered. Inside, the air smelled of rust and old electricity. They stepped into a server room bathed in cold blue light, a maze of computers humming like bees trapped in winter. Noah darted forward, fingers flying across keys. Streams of code flared alive on the screen. "It's all here," he whispered. Data injection scripts, rerouted buoy signals, and he brought up a detailed schedule, high resolution, flagged urgent. Movement order, lighthouse bell. Tonight, via private vessel. Destination code, Site 23. Caleb cursed. They're staging a disaster. The bell goes missing in the storm. Denton collects millions in insurance. Town stays under his thumb. Olivia's voice shook. People could die just to make a spreadsheet look clean. A metallic clang snapped their heads around. A man blocked the exit, wide shoulders filling the frame. Mason Pike, late 30s, a brutish man with a thick black beard and a battered nose that had clearly met too many fists. He wore a heavy coat smeared with motor oil, boots made to kick through doors. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, the eyes of someone who enjoyed the worst parts of his job. He had once driven ice roads up in Canada until a tragic crash killed 2 partners. Since then, he worked for people who paid to bury guilt under violence. "Well now," Mason growled, his voice thick like gravel in diesel fuel. "Looks like we got ourselves some trespassers." Sable snarled, muscles coiled. Mason lunged. Chaos exploded in the narrow aisle. Caleb swung a server tower into Mason's ribs. The impact shook the room, but Mason's fist cracked across Caleb's jaw, sending him to the floor. Noah ducked behind a console, scrambling to eject the USB copy he'd made. Olivia grabbed a flare gun from an emergency kit on the wall, hands trembling as she aimed it. Mason grabbed Olivia's arm, twisting hard. She cried out, dropped the flare, but Sable launched, jaws clamping onto Mason's calf. The villain roared, kicking wildly, but the dog held fast, teeth deep. Caleb stumbled back to his feet and thrust his shoulder into Mason, knocking him into a metal rack that groaned on its hinges. Olivia seized the fallen flare gun, snapped it upward, and fired. A blazing streak screamed past Mason's cheek, slamming into the wall and flooding the dome with blinding red light. He howled, clutching his face as blood trickled down his cheek. "You're gonna pay for that, sweetheart!" he bellowed, stumbling as Sable tore at him again. "Move!" Caleb shouted. They fled through a maintenance door as Mason cursed into the storm behind them. The flare's glow painted the snow crimson as they sprinted for the sled Noah had rigged earlier. They crashed across the ice toward the harbor, lungs burning, Sable bounding beside them like a warrior made from smoke and frost. The harbor was a black maw, swallowing what little light remained. Through the mist, a massive ship materialized. The Aurora Belle, an icebreaker with a jagged bow and floodlights that cut through the dark like knives. The engines rumbled, hungry and impatient. Men in black winter gear hauled a massive wooden crate up a loading ramp, stamped with a simple label, Harbor Light Belle. Caleb took a step forward, but a hand shot out of the dark, clutching his coat. He turned, and dread crushed his chest. Mason Pike had followed. He backhanded Caleb with brutal force. Stars burst behind Caleb's eyes. Sable lunged, but someone grabbed the dog in a chokehold from behind, yanking him back. He snarled, teeth bared, fury burning like fire. Mason dragged Olivia toward the ramp, his voice a harsh whisper against her ear. "See? I told you you'd pay." She fought, but his grip was iron. Mayor Charles Denton stepped from the ship, coat immaculate despite the storm. His hair slicked back perfectly, a cruel smirk cutting across his face. Up close, he looked less like a leader and more like a man who believed he could buy fate itself. "This isn't just about a bell, Officer Morgan," Denton said calmly over the wind. "It's about control. And you should have stayed buried in the ice." The lighthouse beam in the distance flickered, once, twice, then died. Every light in Iron Harbor vanished. Darkness claimed the town. Caleb shouted Olivia's name, voice shredded by fear. Sable roared with desperate fury, and the Aurora Belle swallowed Olivia and the stolen bell into the storm. The Aurora Belle cut through the frozen waves like a steel predator, its engines howling beneath the rising storm. Snow churned into white claws that tore at the deck. Caleb Morgan dragged himself up the side rail after scaling the mooring line, his fingers bruised and bleeding. He had been a rescuer once, a man trained to pull lives from the jaws of the lake. Now he felt like someone the lake was trying to swallow whole. But Olivia was somewhere below, and Caleb would set fire to heaven and earth before he let her vanish. Beside him, Sable landed on the deck with a powerful leap, shaking off shards of ice. His fur was slick with seawater and patches of ash. He favored his right hind leg, but still held his head high, amber eyes locked ahead with fearless resolve. He gave a sharp bark that cut through the storm, a promise of battle. Floodlights flickered as figures emerged from the dark. 2 men in black jackets advanced, rifles raised. Caleb dove behind a coil of frozen rope, heart pounding. One of the henchmen, shorter, hunched, with a scar splitting his lip, fired shots that pinged off metal inches from Caleb's face. The other, tall, blonde, bulky, moved to flank Sable. The shepherd lunged first, jaws clamping onto the man's sleeve, twisting until he crashed into the rail with a howl. The shorter guard attacked with a baton, but Caleb surged forward, smashing him across the jaw with his elbow. Teeth hit the deck. Sable released the blonde man only when Caleb barked, "Down!" Training cut through instinct. The dog stepped back, snarling deep in his chest. The guards scrambled away, slipping on the ice, yelling in panic as he disappeared into the shadows. A metallic bang echoed from the cargo hold. Olivia. Caleb sprinted toward the stairs, Sable limping beside him but refusing to slow. Below deck, the air turned hot and electric. Red generators thrummed, machines wired into a sleek network of consoles with screens showing falsified NOAA data. At the center of the hold, chained and bolted, was the harbor light bell, its bronze surface reflecting the pulsing crimson glow. Even silent, it radiated a presence, like a relic carved from the soul of the town. And next to it, bound to a support beam, cheeks swollen from a struggle, Dr. Olivia Reed. Her ponytail was matted with snow, her glasses cracked, yet her green-brown eyes remained fierce. "Caleb!" she gasped, straining against the ropes. "They're going to sink the bell and blame the storm." Before Caleb could free her, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Mason Pike charged out of the shadows, face flushed with rage. A jagged silver knife in his fist. His beard was matted with drops of frozen blood, Sable's bite still fresh. "You should have minded your damn business," he snarled. Caleb barely dodged the first swipe. The second cut sparks off a steel beam. Mason was bigger, stronger. Anger made him faster. But Caleb had desperation and the memory of his drowned brother screaming inside his bones. He grabbed a loose pipe and swung viciously. Mason blocked, headbutted Caleb, sending him reeling into a stack of crates. Sable launched like a missile, teeth driving into Mason's forearm. Mason roared and slammed the dog against the railing. A terrible yelp tore from Sable's throat, and Caleb felt something inside him snap. He tackled Mason fully, both men grappling near the chains that held the bell. Olivia screamed for Caleb to look out. Mason swung a heavy wrench from the ground. The blow struck Caleb's shoulder, fire ripping through his nerves. Mason raised the wrench again. But Sable, bleeding and trembling, lunged once more, clamping onto Mason's wrist with the last of his strength. Caleb seized the moment. He tore the emergency flare from his belt and rammed it into Mason's chest. Flames burst, a searing red flash. Mason stumbled backward, silent shock frozen on his face, then toppled over the rail into the engine room below. Silence, save for the hum of machines and Sable's labored breaths. Caleb rushed to Olivia, cutting her free. She clutched his jacket, relief and fear mixing in her shaking voice. "The bell! We have to get it off the ship." Caleb nodded, though his knees buckled. They worked together to break the chains as Sable collapsed beside them, his breathing rapid but determined. On the deck above, a cheer erupted. Light suddenly pierced the windows. The harbour light was shining again. Across the water, Iron Harbour glowed golden, thanks to Ruthie Lane, who had managed to reroute emergency power to the lighthouse. She stood at the radio booth in her sparkly sweater, tears streaming freely as she whispered to her audience, "Come home. Bring our people home." Sirens wailed. State police vehicles lined the shore. Caleb hoisted one end of the bell while Olivia pulled open the cargo hatch. The wind blasted upward, but beneath its roar came the pure, ancient toll of the bell striking open steel. Gong, gong, gong. Its voice soared into the night like a prayer. In that moment, Mayor Charles Denton appeared at the top of the stairs, shouting orders, only to be tackled by officers swarming aboard. He screamed curses, drowned by the storm and the bell's riveting song. Caleb dropped to his knees beside Sable, lifting the dog's head into his lap. Sable's amber eyes fluttered open, still searching for Caleb, still loyal even on the edge of darkness. "You did it," Caleb whispered, voice breaking. "You saved us all." Sable's tail thumped weakly, just once. Later, as the town gathered around the restored bell at the lighthouse, the choir sang under the halo of returning power. Children held candles. Adults wept openly. Ruthie declared, through a microphone crackling with emotion, "Tonight, Iron Harbour crowns our hero, K9 Officer Sable, our guardian in fur and faith." Caleb sat beside the fire they built to warm the brave shepherd, Olivia resting against his shoulder, Noah kneeling to pet Sable gently. The dog closed his eyes, not in fear, but in peace. For the first time in a very long while, Sable was home. Sometimes, God's miracles don't arrive with thunder or shining wings. Sometimes they come quietly, on four paws, with gentle eyes and a heart that refuses to give up on us. Like Sable, a forgotten soldier of the fire, astray in a storm. But in God's perfect timing, a guardian sent to the one man who needed saving just as much as he did. Life can feel like a blizzard. We lose people we love. We question our purpose. We wonder why the dark feels so long and the night so cold. But remember this, even in the fiercest storm, God still lights a lamp for us, a lighthouse that never truly goes dark, and He often uses the loyal, the humble, and the broken to guide us safely home again. So if this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need hope tonight. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and who your guardian angel is. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of courage, faith, and God's love working in surprising ways. May the Lord bless you. May He protect you and your family. And may every loyal dog who walks this earth be a reminder that love never leaves us behind. Amen.